sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I live by the old code of second floor!
Why look for a scientific explanation when you can put blind trust in an invisible Sky Daddy?
Sky Daddy all the way.
Go watch your crappy sitcom! Turn up full volume, why don't you?
Aubrey, weird, I can't even get through my couch!
We're back. Welcome to the studio, man. With our moody lighting.
It's a vibe.
It's cold and rainy outside.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by concrete. It's great.
Yeah. Super unexpected. It was super sunny all last week.
Yeah, it was.
Like beautiful weather.
Mm-hmm. It got up to like 80, 85 too.
Yeah.
That's Texas for you, man.
Yeah, dude.
So I have some interesting topics for you today. I know that you will love.
Okay.
And it's coming from 2 podcast episodes I listened to from the Sean Ryan Show podcast.
Okay.
The first one was Chris Bledsoe, who had a UFO experience in North Carolina in 2007. And then Diana Pasolka, who is a professor of religious studies at the University of North Carolina. She focuses her studies on the intersection of religion, technology, and belief in extraterrestrial life. And she's Catholic.
Holy crap,
And
dude.
she's been to the Vatican archives.
Really?
Dude, she said this in her episode that there are 53 miles worth of bookshelves in the Vatican that you have to give them months of advance, asking them to find what you want to see because it takes them that long to find
Holy crap, dude.
it. Yeah.
53
Yeah.
miles?
So,
I
I
didn't know
mean,
that.
like, I'm going to be all over the place with these 2 episodes, like probably going back and forth. But basically, just to give you a synopsis, the first one I listened to, Chris Bledsoe, had this experience in 2007 where he experienced these like giant balls of like red light and like basically had a telepathic, they like talked to him telepathically while he was in the woods. He had gone down to the woods with his friends and he had just sold his construction company after the 2008 crash. And he like wandered off basically and ended up having this phenomena happen, comes back, tells them about it. He thinks he's only gone 20 minutes. He's been gone for like 5 hours. His son is there. His son came with him, but when he came back to camp, his son was gone. And turns out his son had gone out looking for him and was like hiding, shell-shocked, terrified in this field because he had seen those same things. And turns out like when you got closer to them, it was like a 3-foot tall, like 4-year-old child type body type, like a really small body type with like glowing red eyes, but they were like shining like the moon, and they could like talk to you telepathically. And so his son ends up seeing the same thing and is freaked out bad. And
So they both saw these beings?
then they went back to camp and they were like, let's get out of here. Got in their truck, started driving, and they're watching these things follow them. And then one comes right in the middle of the road. And so now everyone, the other 2 or 3 guys that were with them, experienced it as well. And like, that's a crazy UFO story, right? But what I found super interesting about this guy is he actually has like continued to have these like very, very, very wild experiences and is like a believer in Jesus. Was a Christian before. He was a deacon in the Pentecostal church. And then he's like so much more of a believer now. didn't lose his faith at all, and communicates with these things come like once a year back to him, and like, and this one is in like the form of a woman, and she like tells him stuff that's going to happen. But what's crazy is that he's actually been studied by NASA, by the CIA. He wrote a book called The UFO of God, and the foreword of this book is written by the former CIA director. And they've become like really good friends. And so he's like very much in touch with a lot of government agencies. They've studied his body. After that event in 2007 that I mentioned earlier with the aliens, he was cured of Crohn's disease. Like, just didn't have it anymore. And like, dude, there's like so much more that was crazy. But basically, people will like come to his house. And because this is what happened. Everyone thought he was crazy afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. And like, he felt like the message that these things told him was like, tell this to the world. And everyone thought he was crazy. Everyone thought his kids were crazy. Everyone thought his son was crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, this happened over a period of years. And he got so mad. He's like, went outside and said, God, like, why did you let me have this experience? No one believes me. Like, why did you tell me? Like, you ruined my life, basically.
Yeah.
And I think either one of the beings appeared to him or like God spoke to him or something like that. It was basically like, this is your burden to bear, but from now on, like, anytime you ask, I will like show these things, right? So people like over and over and over again have come to his house and have experienced seeing these orbs of light that they can't explain. And there was even an incident where a journalist came to like, there was like this tree that basically burned from the inside out. It was like an anomaly. It was like the only tree around that it happened to. And apparently something happens every year around Easter time. And that was one of the years that this tree burned from the inside out. So a few people from the government came and studied it. And one of them was this reporter. And he gets there. He's like, I just want to stay with you. You know what? I just want to like hang out with you and document all this. And he's like, okay. And he's just the chillest southern guy. He's in his 60s now. Yeah. Just the like most North Carolinian dude. Like, it's so cool. And so calm and collected. It's crazy. And so this reporter shows up. They're out there looking at the tree with his dog there. Like, he's a hunter and he like has a bunch of dogs, but his like best friend, main dog, was there. And it was like nothing really happened necessarily. There was like maybe like a rustle of something or like a weird energy they felt. And all of a sudden blood started spurting from the dog's neck. And they like ran the dog back to the house, and people were like trying to figure out like what's going on. Oh my gosh, and like literally at the neck was just bleeding, like cut an artery bleeding.
And so he's out.
He's with the reporter. The reporter got all this on video apparently. And he literally was like, this dog's about to die. Like, the ambulance is 20 minutes away, the vet's an hour away. Like, this dog's going to die. That sucks. Like, what's going on? And he just prays and puts his hand over the thing, and there's blood coming out and stuff. Prays, and then all of a sudden, like, lifts his hand off, and the cut's gone. And the dog, like, pops back up and starts wagging her tail, and is, like, totally fine. All of his family's there, too, by the way. And they're, like, freaking out. And the reporter apparently gets all this on video. Then he gets a call. I don't know if the timeline's right on all this, but like another event, basically, he gets a call, and there's this Jewish boy, I think, he's dying, and it has it's like a Make-A-Wish situation, and he basically has to fly to DC the next day because there's a government dude that called him like, hey, this is a higher up son or something, like no one can help him. Oh, it was his parents. Both of his parents were like super high level doctors. And he had like this super rare condition and he was dying. Dude went up, this guy Chris went up there and just sat in the hospital room with the kid, and like just praying like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know why I'm here. Like, I can't heal this kid, you know?
Did they like ask him to come see him?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're asking him to go see this kid as like a last resort. And apparently it's like 1 a.m. or something like that, and he hears God say, "Just go hug him," and he goes and hugs the kid, and then like the kid's just healed. Like all the nurses come in, and like that was, I think like 12 years ago, and the kid's like going to college now or something like that, and still is in contact with them. The parents are like good friends with them now. And then
Holy crap.
one more incident that was crazy was he was at a bar mitzvah, and there was an older gentleman there. People started screaming. He went over. This older, I think it was the grandfather of the kid having a bar mitzvah, was having a stroke, like on the dance floor. And he went over there and was just like, oh my gosh, and just like put his hands on the dude's face. And the dude was like healed instantly and just got up and was fine. But was like having an active stroke before that. So the whole story is wild. Like, you should go listen to it. You would love it.
I will.
And I really want to read the book now. But like,
okay, wait. So let me just get this straight. So this guy,
yeah.
like, how old was he when he first had that encounter with his son? You said they were out camping?
They were fishing.
They were fishing.
Yeah, but they had like a campfire.
Okay. So they went out at night,
Yeah.
and that's when he went out, saw these beings, like,
Yeah.
right?
Well, from far away, there are these like red or like giant red orbs.
Okay. Then he gets closer,
Yeah.
and there are these beings that like
Basically,
meet him.
Yeah. Sort of.
So then he's gone for a while.
he only
and
thinks it's 20 minutes, but he's gone for a while.
Okay, so his son goes out to find him,
Yes.
sees the same thing.
Yes.
They both come back like.
He goes out
terrified.
to find, and he goes out when he comes back to the campfire. He goes out to find his son. Finds his son.
Okay.
Son's freaking out. Then they go back.
And then they all drive back together as a family.
It's
Or like
just-
whoever's there.
Yeah, it's like some of their. He had a construction business, and it was some of his, like, top construction guys.
Okay. And they see this being again.
The being's like following them in their truck.
And so then from then on, like, he hadn't had any of these experiences before that time.
Okay,
Or
that's where I'm kind of like blurry on. I think he had it.
like specifically these like, I'm saying like healing experiences and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. He hadn't had any of that before. Was running a successful home building company, and then it basically tanked in 2008 during the financial crisis, and he like lost everything, and he had Crohn's disease like throughout that whole time, and had to take medicine every single day. Would go to the bathroom like 20 times a day.
Gosh.
Yeah, and afterwards like just was completely healed, and that's why part of the reason why they studied him so much was because of that reason. They didn't have an explanation as to why he just didn't have Crohn's disease anymore. And so I don't know. It just got me really thinking, and what really, so that's kind of half of it. That's what like got me into it, right? Then the next episode I listened to was with this lady, Diane, and she teaches at North Carolina, but I think she had gone to Stanford, I'm pretty sure, for a time. And so she basically got into this whole like UAP and UFO research, I think around the same time as this guy had his experience or whatever. And so she's been studying it for a while, and she was approached by this guy who had an exorbitant amount of access, like government IDs. Like she said, he was the guy they called after NASA blew up a rocket ship and was like, "Hey, can you like help us solve this?" And just like she's like one of these people that just has access to a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like convincing, over a period of time they become friends, and he's like trying to convince her that this is real. She doesn't believe that UFOs are real. And so he's like, okay, let me try to convince you, let me show you some evidence. And so he basically takes her and another professor out to this private site. They like wear blindfolds, and they take them out to this private site. It's a crash site. And they basically, she's like, I can't explain this, but she's like, we found this material that looked like frog skin but it was some type of metal. And like basically he was trying to show her physical evidence of something she couldn't understand, to show her that like maybe these things are real, these type of experiences are real.
Yeah.
So that starts her on this whole journey of looking into these stories, and she's using her professional training as a PhD to do that. And so I think she wrote a book too, several. American Cosmic is I think her like first main book that put her out there. And then Encounters, Experiences with Non-Human Intelligences. And so what's really interesting about her podcast story is that she took a turn in looking into these types of experiences through the eyes of religion too.
Okay.
And so when she goes to she's been to the Vatican archive several times, and she studied these firsthand accounts of saints. And she was like, this blew my mind. She basically put together that there were saints that like were reported to basically like have telepathy, or like we would maybe call it like a spirit of discernment.
Yeah, okay.
And then also able to like float, essentially. And these are like firsthand accounts that are historical documents in the Vatican archives. And they were never legitimized by the Catholic Church because they were so troublesome. Like they just didn't know how to explain them. But they still like sainted these people, right? Or bestowed sainthood on these people. And so she like kind of explained it in a way I've never heard someone explain it before. And she even goes into these accounts in Ezekiel seeing all of these angels, right? And these different things, of John in Revelation experiencing these visions, of Daniel experiencing the angel, right? And she's like, when she started getting into these accounts, she saw it from a totally different perspective. She saw all these stories in the Bible from a totally different perspective. And so like I give all that foundation to say that what's been on my mind is, it's just really interesting to me that, you know, the government's come out and affirmed that UAPs and UFOs do exist. That there's unidentifiable experiences that people have had. And, you know, now everyone's kind of like, okay, well, the government says it's real, but like, what is it? Now everyone's kind of like, well, what is it, right? And so, you know, these two accounts to me are really unique. That in the sense of I've never heard something like that before. And I've never heard someone from like a, you know, Christian or Catholic background really talk about how they interpreted these things that they just can't, are like having a hard time understanding. Like this dude's like, I don't know why these people came to me. I don't know why it was me. I don't know why I can heal people. Like, I just know that it's God. And he's like, I know it's Jesus. Like, I know that he's coming back. And somehow, you know, these things are related to that. And I'm just like, to me, that just opens up a whole new can of worms. And I think for me growing up, I had a very narrow perception of God and Christianity, in the sense of it was just like, it was traditional. It was church, and you do these different things. And I'm like overgeneralizing, but now I'm starting to think about like, well, okay, if God is all these things, right, that I know, I believe him to be, then like why is it so out of the ordinary or impossible to think that he could show up in different ways than we've traditionally understood him to show up? Or you know, if there is a spiritual war going on out there, then why are we so close-minded to think we know how it operates? So I've kind of been challenging that mindset, or that belief that I've had of like skepticism, I would say. I'm being skeptical about my skepticism and wondering, because I'm like, well, okay, because one of the guys that approached that guy, Chris, was from NASA, and was basically talking about how, and this other guy that approached the professor, Diane, they were both of the mindset that higher level consciousness or collective consciousness was like the next major breakthrough. Because the government sees these types of events as an opportunity to gain information.
Yeah.
And they want to figure out how they can get ahead, and they don't want any other country to figure that out. Right? So they're taking it seriously, but then they obviously pivot and tell the public that it's not that big of a deal and they shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Which it makes total sense. And so I'm like, okay, well, then if the government's like really, really wants to know what's going on, then to me that legitimizes it even more. And
yeah,
you know, I think that for so long people have discounted anything extraterrestrial or anything of another dimension, and now people are more open to these different ideas. It's just interesting to see that happen.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about it myself, and I'm wondering about these different things and the way that people operate, and I think that God's designed the world in a way that we just don't fully understand, and there's a spiritual dimension that we don't fully understand, and I don't think it's wrong to be open to just trying to understand these things from like a biblical perspective or a biblical worldview.
Yeah,
I think it's possible to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It's so tough because there's so much stuff out there.
There's so much.
There's so much, and yeah, like the government, they're not just gonna tell us what's going on exactly. Even if you're not a conspiracy theorist, right? It just makes sense that like
why would they?
if they're honestly trying to protect people, it would make sense for them to not reveal all this stuff, right? And then especially if they're, I mean, on the flip side, if they're trying to gain a certain technology or knowledge, or advantage, whatever, then it's no different than AI or the space race.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is gonna be them trying to gain an advantage to stay in power, really. Not really to like, I mean, I don't know. There's so many different ways you could go about this as far as like the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely.
What do you think about like all of because I just talked for a long time. Like, what do you think about all of that before you go down a rabbit hole?
Well, I don't want to go like it down unless you want to. I don't really care, but
I'm just interested in the implications that those kinds of stories have, or experiences have, or evidence has towards.
Yeah, I think either way. I don't know. There's like a big tendency to be afraid for believers. Like, oh my gosh, like if aliens are real, then like does God not exist or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like I don't think we have to be afraid of things like this, just like dismantling our faith entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's,
I agree.
I don't think that's necessary at all. I definitely think that the Bible holds space for experiences like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's whether those experiences are real or not. Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
What's that noise?
I think it's the espresso machine.
Oh. Yeah, whether they're real or not, like you just gotta do your own research, and you gotta really just be careful to not fall for all the, like BS that's out there.
Yeah.
Really. Because there's a lot of it. But like, okay, so personally, like I guess my thoughts on all of it is, one, like as soon as Dude, the Divine Conspiracy book. I feel like ties into all this a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I really think so, because it wouldn't surprise me, dude, if like these aliens are spiritual beings, and that if, like, to me, that would be totally in line with the theology of the divine of the divine council.
Oh, you mean the
Right.
unseen realm?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. The
book-
unseen realm,
the
not
book,
the
The
divine
Unseen.
conspiracy, the unseen realm.
Yes.
And the unseen realm talks about the divine council,
Mm.
right? Which is like basically the idea that God is not, like, he has these other beings that he governs over and allows them to basically help him govern the world, or at least he did at some point for a certain amount of time, right? And there's a bunch of other, there's so many verses and everything we could go into with that, but to me that's what would make sense, is that, I mean, maybe these beings are from outer space, or maybe they're from the ocean, or maybe they're from wherever,
Yeah.
And maybe maybe they're not like spiritual beings. Maybe they are actual other intelligent life forms. I don't think that's necessarily out of, like, the possibility, of
Mm-hmm.
of what's described in the Bible. But I think, to me, it makes more sense that they probably are some kind of spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. That's like, I think, like, if I had to bet,
Yeah.
that's what I would bet on.
Mm.
But it's like, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? We always think we know everything, dude. I think we know everything, and we don't.
I mean, yeah,
We just don't.
yeah. I don't. What do you think?
I agree with you. I'm like pretty much right where you're at, and I think that going to SAGU like really helped me understand that it's okay to not know. It's okay to
Yeah.
not. It really is okay, and
Yeah,
that, like, if the Bible doesn't mention something, it doesn't mean that it's not real. And like the point of the Bible is not to like mention every single thing that's ever been created, or describe how every single thing is supposed to work. Like, it's a very specific book for a very specific purpose.
right.
And so that has really helped me hold space in my mind for these other things to think about and
Yeah,
how they would work. And I agree with you. I think that that's the divine council is super interesting. The unseen realm is super interesting to consider. And I don't know. I mean, I just wish more people would be open like that to consider those things. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that just kind of shut down when you bring up anything that doesn't match their worldview.
right.
And I always try to challenge myself in what I believe of, why do you believe this and what backs this up?
Right.
I'm like
Yeah.
constantly trying to figure out, because I want to know the truth, right?
Right.
I want to know the truth. And so
That's what it means to pursue the truth.
exactly, you're doing
Right.
it like you you have to remove every single bias that you have as best as possible
Yeah.
to see things in a specific light. And you can't be afraid to be wrong. You have to be okay going in that you could be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really hard for most people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be wrong, but I would rather be wrong at the expense of knowing what's right
Yeah.
than not. And so that's what's really been getting me recently, is how to stay flexible for the things that I don't understand yet,
Mm-hmm.
and be open to those, and also test them with the same ambition that I test other things and not just accept it as like, oh, this is like crazy and different, so I'll accept it as true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just where I've been at.
Yeah.
Hmm.
To me, I really feel like there is a connection between. This might be kind of wild to say. I don't feel like it is, but I really think there's a connection somehow between all of this like ancient civilization stuff, right? That's I don't know, it's gotten like a lot of attention over the past, several years. Things like the pyramids or Atlantis or all those things. I think there's, like, in my mind, all that stuff connects to like the Nephilim, like the pre-flood time that we just truthfully don't know a lot about.
Yeah.
And then I also think that connects to these like alien spiritual beings that we can't describe, right? Like to me, I just feel like it's hard to decipher to figure out like where that line is of connection. But I just like, I have a gut feeling that like somehow it is all connected because
that's so interesting.
Because like you have these giant pyramids,
and
like all these giant structures that people are finding out that are, like researchers are finding out that they're way older than expected, and they have no idea how they're constructed. And some of them like we couldn't even really do today, like the way they did it, right? Like there's a guy named Jimmy, I think it's Jimmy, gosh, I can't remember his name, Corsetti. He does a YouTube channel called Bright Insight. And he talks about how the stones that they would have carried, like that they used for the pyramids, it was for a statue that existed like they say like 25,000 years, like 2,500 years ago. But now they're realizing it's much older than that, because the quarry that they took it from is like hundreds and hundreds of miles away, and it's like, I mean, dude, it's a ridiculous amount of weight. It's absurd. Like how it's supposedly like the biggest statue that we know of, right? And in like modern time, there's I don't remember like who it was or where, but some government or whatever wanted to do like move this giant stone in front of like a museum or whatever, and it took this gigantic truck that was, I think it was like miles long, and it could only move it like 4 miles an hour. Jeez. And it was like, I don't remember how long it took. It took forever for them to do it. And this stone was like I don't even know. A fraction of the size of the stone that's in Egypt, right? So it's like, how do you explain that? Right. That obviously, to me, the people back then obviously had some kind of technology that we don't know about. So, and that's pre-flood. To me, that sounds like, like to me that perfectly aligns with, I mean, not perfectly, who knows? It could align with the Nephilim, right? You have these spiritual beings that come down. Who probably have some form of advanced knowledge.
So for the people who don't know what a Nephilim is, can you explain it to them?
Yeah. The Nephilim, they're spiritual beings described in Genesis before the flood. And they're called the sons of God. That's how the Bible describes them. And they came down and basically mated with like human beings and caused a lot of chaos. But the idea is that they were spiritual beings and they were men of renown, I think. Like, I think that's how it describes them. They had like capabilities
Yeah.
that normal human beings didn't.
Yeah.
So
They were kind of like demigods almost.
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Sort of.
Pretty much. So to me, that just, I mean, because then you have people like Bob Lazar, who, I mean, his whole story is insane,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can go to Joe Rogan and watch listen to his story. And he talks about how in his time that he worked for the government, there were ships, he claimed that there were ships that like were dug up,
Mm-hmm.
as in like they were ancient. So, and then you have people like Tucker Carlson, who, I mean, dude, how many people does that dude talk to? And he talks about how he believes these, like, all the UFOs, the aliens are all spiritual beings, and that they actually come from the ocean and not outer space. And then you have, the Tic Tac video of like this little, I don't know.
I haven't seen that one.
It's like some kind of ship that was spotted like over the ocean with radar, and you can see it goes from like 40,000 feet in the air to like just above sea level in a matter of seconds, and then like goes into the water.
Yeah.
There's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff that
it's a lot to consider.
It is. But I don't know. Like, to me, I feel like there's some kind of connection between, divine council, Nephilim, ancient technology, and then the stuff people see now. But who knows?
But who knows?
Who knows?
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears here because you mentioned the divine conspiracy, and I was listening to like several things on the Sermon on the Mount this morning, and I've been really thinking a lot about sort of all the paradoxes in the Bible in terms of like the teachings, and seemingly like paradoxes.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a really unique tension that Jesus teaches as a principle of the kingdom of God that I'm trying to like wrap my head around. And specifically what I mean is like this blatant reliance on God that from the perspective of someone in the world would seem really unwise. And like an example would be when Jesus says, like, go out to all the highways and byways, telling the disciples, go to the towns all around you, preach the gospel, and don't bring any money with you. Don't bring any extra clothes. Like, basically find your way and stop at a house and ask to stay there. And if they don't want you there, then leave and go to the next one.
Yeah.
Just stuff like, pray for your enemies. That's a wild thing.
Yeah. Turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek. You have all these like really wild things. Yet at the same time, the Bible says to be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. And the whole book of Proverbs is about following the way of the wise and not the way of the fool, right? Like a sitting at wisdom's table instead of the wayward woman's table. And I'm kind of like trying to attribute all of this to business. I'm trying to apply it all to business right now in the sense of like, okay, there are a lot of things in the Bible that God asked people to do that like didn't make sense. And at the time, right? Like, it doesn't make sense for Abraham to sacrifice his firstborn son. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for Jesus to stand in front of the Sanhedrin completely innocent, yet not defend himself at all.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense, right? Like, there's just a lot of things that you can look at from a worldly perspective and be like, why? Like, I would never, that just, it seems almost dumb. It really does seem dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But then, when you look at it from the perspective of the kingdom of God and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and you start to understand that those types of principles work really differently than conventional, like we would call it like worldly wisdom. And
Yeah.
then you see God intervene, right? And is like, gave the ram to Abraham to sacrifice instead of Isaac. Why? Because it was a test of faith. Had Jesus stand silent before his accusers because he knew that what he was about to do was going to conquer death, hell, and the grave, bring salvation to the Gentiles and to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
You see like a greater plan at play after people following in obedience, what they were asked to do.
Yeah.
Right? And so, it's like, okay, so if I pray for my enemy, or if someone asks for my cloak and I give them everything else too, or they ask me to go a mile and I go 2, right? It's like those types of things don't really make sense, but like the purpose of them is a kingdom principle. It's like, it's about trust and it's about faith. It's about turning things upside down.
Mm-hmm.
The least be the greatest be the least. And I think that there are a lot of things that people take as sound, wise business advice. And then I also think, I think that there could be times when God is specifically asking you to do something that like doesn't really make sense, right? It could be in anything. It doesn't have to just be business.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest stories sometimes come out of the wildest decisions. And there are other times where it doesn't work out, right? And there is wisdom to be, like godly wisdom to have in those situations. I don't know. I've just really been kind of contemplating those things. And just trying to understand how to apply that, I would say, in like a daily life.
Yeah.
When you can't see the future and you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And yeah, I mean, especially apply it to business where you're like trying to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess create something that you want to be successful, but in a way that's not for your glory, for his glory.
Mm-hmm. Like tithing is another thing that doesn't make earthly sense. Like, why would you give away 10% of your income, or why would you give away any of your income towards like this spiritual realm, or toward like to help other people if you really need it, right? Or like, oh, that's like I could really use that, right? That's another area where it's a giving out of faith. It's a giving out of generosity for the specific purpose of combating greed, growing other people's ministries, and advancing the kingdom in different ways, and helping you to be a cheerful giver.
Yeah.
Like, but other people looking at that from the outside, it may not make sense at first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Truthfully, though, I guess, I mean, this is kind of a tangent, but it's just interesting to me that it seems like, at least from what I've experienced in the business world,
Mm-hmm.
even with me like starting my business over the last like couple months,
Mm-hmm.
the generosity that you find with like business owners is pretty like surprising to me compared to, I mean, compared to what you experience in the church sometimes.
Okay.
Like when I went to the BNI chapter,
Yeah.
I felt like everyone just wanted to give me something. Like everyone wanted to, I don't know, which I know that's like the whole model of BNI. It's like givers gain,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Which is a kingdom principle.
yeah, that's a yes, 100% a kingdom principle. And that's obviously that's something that's taught in church for
Sure.
for sure.
Sure.
But we don't have to go down that whole thing. We've talked a lot about that. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely, that has been, in terms of faith and kind of living in a way oftentimes that just doesn't make sense. I mean, I feel like for me personally, the probably the biggest way that I've experienced that is being here in Texas. Because there's been so many times where I've thought, why am I here? You know, what am I doing here? Although I've had those thoughts, I've felt this call by God to be here, and you know, and involved in all the things that we're doing. But every step of the way, I've just seen the hand of God like through all of it, and just trusting Him that His plan is better than mine, even though sometimes it's very difficult. There's times I get super mad at God and like super frustrated, but that's, you know, I'm like nowhere near. It's not like I figured it out or anything. It's still every day, like I just have to really every day just take another step.
Yeah.
And put my trust in God and trust that He's going to make everything work out. But that's the Christian faith. Like that's what it means to live by faith. And I think about that verse in James a lot, where you know, he says, you know, don't go making these plans. I'm like paraphrasing, but don't go making these plans like, oh, I'll move here in a year and make this amount of money or whatever. But really like submit to God and like and submit to His will for your life. But again, that's like seemingly a paradox, because it's like, okay, well, that doesn't mean I can just be lazy and not plan ahead for my life and not prepare, right? And grow and you know, all those things. But it just means you have to find that balance of bettering yourself and, you know, preparing for the future, growing as a person, but also always being really submissive to God's plan, like understanding that He can change like the course of your life at any time, and you have to be willing to accept that, even if that means losing money or giving money away or, you know, going somewhere or spending time with a person that you don't want to be around. Like, yeah, it's just, dude, I hate it because there's so many cliches in all this. There's so many. And I can't remember how many times I've heard a sermon where it's like, you know, you can't be comfortable. Like, if you're comfortable, then you know, you're not, I don't know, whatever. You're not growing as a Christian. Like, it's like, gosh, do I really have to be uncomfortable for the rest of my life, you know?
Gosh.
But
For real.
like, there was a long time that I would kind of get annoyed by those kind of statements. But I think I am at least starting to understand, like, to like really understand.
Yeah. What that means.
Yeah, what that means. Because it is true. Like, that is how. It's another thing that's kind of upside down, is that it's like through failure and through the hard times that you come out better.
Yeah.
Which is another cliche, but
It is, but it's a cliche for a reason.
yeah,
And I think a lot of times we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And we're always looking
Yeah.
for like what's the new take and what's the new spin and the new little gem that I can have. And sometimes the greatest things are just the reminders of like what we already know. Like, I know that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think that's probably why so many of those sermons happen, and I feel the same way a lot of times, honestly. And yeah, I just think I don't know, man. I just think that I think our country is in such a wild place right now that
yeah,
it feels like all of these systems are being like broken, or a lot of the status quo is changing. It feels like,
Yeah.
especially in our government. It feels like things are kind of in a washing machine right now. They're just getting churned. It's just a lot of churning going on, and it's just going to be interesting to see how the church, as a whole, like reacts to the next few years, I think.
I agree.
And I really think that there's like a stirring and a churning happening in people's hearts and minds. They're kind of like, I hate to use the term waking up. I really do. I really do. But they're becoming aware
Yeah,
to their desire for something different. Or,
dude, I would 100% agree.
I mean, maybe
Yeah.
it's just my experience, but I feel like I see stuff all the time that people are just like, yeah, it's like, what's going on right now is not working. Or like the way that it's happening, it's not working.
Yeah.
And people are hungry for something new.
Mhm.
I think that they would frankly take anything, but as long as it's convincing that it's helpful to them. But it's just going to be so fascinating to see what happens, dude. I mean, already this year started out so wild. We're already in February. Just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much stuff going on, dude, that it's like, how do you even keep up? If you want to stay on top of it all, it's like a job.
It is a job.
It's like freaking
It really
full-time
is.
job, dude.
It really is.
Yeah. But yeah, there is a lot that I'm also curious to see how things are just gonna play out with, like, I don't know, church, like the Christian faith. I mean, there's structures on Mars, dude. Apparently,
That's wild.
all these files being declassified.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency, AI. There's just so much.
It is wild because we are like, well, pretty much like the last or one of the last generations that grew up in a childhood without AI,
Yeah.
which is wild.
I mean, yeah. I feel like we're one of the last generations that grew up without a lot of things.
Mhm.
Like, cryptocurrency was not a thing,
No.
really. I mean, dude, like
iPhones kind of were
iPhones, yeah,
sort of not a thing yet for most of the childhood.
yeah, AI. Yeah, there's just like I'm just so even just within like the next 10 years, I feel like so much could be different. So much, dude.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I'm kind of cool with keeping this one short. Unless you have more that you want to talk about.
I mean,
We were supposed to have a guest on today, but we didn't. Had to reschedule. So, we're sort of just vibing.
I guess okay. I do have a question for you. Like, if I've heard a lot of talk about, like a big spiritual revival taking place
Really?
in America. Yeah, not a lot, but I've heard it like here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean I remember one time specifically at my church back home. This one dude got up on stage like during worship. I don't know if he was like a pastor or what, and he like prophesied. And dude, this in our like big church, this does not happen a lot. So it was kind of like, oh my gosh. But he prophesied, saying all this stuff about how America there's gonna be like a massive revival. Like people are gonna be, I don't know. I can't remember all that he said, but I just remember him saying that there's gonna be like a big revival in America. And truthfully, I have like always kind of felt the same. Like I've ever since high school, I've felt like God is just kind of like stirring the pot, like
Yeah.
like there's like this kind of
Me too.
like we're almost like arriving at something.
Yeah.
And it like I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I talked about the same thing with my youth pastor in high school.
Yeah.
And one time, I stopped a couple in Walmart after church, in like the middle of Walmart, and asked them if I could pray for them. And I did. And then they were like, wow, you're so young. Like, oh my gosh. And you got such a strong Bible name. They were like older couple.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I said that already. But they were like you're gonna like be a part of like leading your generation. And just kind of like gave me a word,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of happened like I would say several other times throughout high school and college.
Yeah.
And I think it's all, if I'm being really honest, I think it's all wrapped up in like what's like what we're doing with the podcast and like what
Yeah.
we're doing in Austin. And I think that things are kind of they're primed right
Yes.
now for whatever you want to call it, a revival, a spark, a rejuvenation of awareness. Like people are kind of getting almost desperate for something of
Yes.
meaning, something of
Right,
purpose.
right.
And to me, Jesus is the greatest solution to that possible. And I get really weary of people that, you know, are always talking about revival, and I just don't know if it's gonna look like what they think it's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like the Asbury revival that happened in Kentucky was like really cool. But dude, after like I think like 3 weeks, they had to literally shut it down and like tell people to go home because of the logistics. It was like the town was overrun. There was like not enough anything, parking, food, hotels, like people were camping out. And I think that a lot of times we don't know what we're asking for when you ask for revival.
Yeah, I would agree.
We just kind of like hope that, I don't know, something happens. And maybe this is too much to say, but I think that when people pray that stuff, they want it to come through their church, because part of them wants to be able to say, you know, this started here. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, God did this, but like it's kind of our church, you know, it happened through our church. So we're forever enshrined in history. I think that just as humans, we think that way. I wonder if it's going to be more of like a grassroots type thing of people that like you wouldn't expect.
I was going to say, would you be surprised if it didn't come out of a church?
I wouldn't, dude.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Here, and this is exactly why. It's because like I think that God has been trying for a long time, and this is my own personal opinion. I think God's been trying for a long time to break the church out of its mold and use it in a really cool way. But I think because people are so closed-minded, specifically religious people, just happen to be really closed-minded a lot of times and divisive and like always just focusing on the wrong things, that I think that God's kind of like, okay, like I tried, but I'm going to go where people will do crazy things for me that don't make sense. And I think that, like, honestly, I think that Austin's kind of primed for that because there's a lot of crazy people here. And frankly, they just don't sit well in conventional church. People in Austin just don't fit the mold that a lot of churches want. And, you know, they're not like the 2-parent dual income household with kids that like most churches are looking for. Right. And, you know, they got freaking tattoos and piercings, and, you know, they're like, they'll drink occasionally or a lot, or, you know, they got a lot of things, or they're like super new age or whatever. But they like want to know Jesus. Like they really, 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 really want to know Jesus. And I don't know, man. I have that same feeling of like, I think it's going to be really grassroots, and I think it's going to be really tactile in the sense of, you know, I'm not really sure if it's going to be like majorly on social media or I don't know. I really don't know. But I just feel like it's going to, people respond. I think people are primed right now to really respond to action and things that are real. Like they've been fed so much BS and so many promises and so many like gurus online selling courses and so many pastors that say they're going to do one thing and come out that they freaking molested someone or they misused church funds, or so many politicians that come out that they did the exact same thing. And people are so tired of that, man. They're so tired of like the titles and the achievements and the pompous presentations. And I think people just want raw and real and authentic and something that they can relate to. I don't know how all that's going to fit together, but that's my opinion. That's like, if I just tell you what I'm feeling, that's what I think it's going to be.
I think I would 100% agree, dude.
Is there anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, I feel, I mean, dude, part of me, I would say I definitely would agree that I don't think the revival is going to look how we would expect it to look. I think a lot of times in my mind, like when I have thought of revival, like growing up in church and everything, it's, it's like day of Pentecost. Everyone's speaking in tongues and I don't know, like everyone's going crazy, whatever, right? Kind of like an Asbury situation, which, I mean, yeah, it's a revival, but like, I think it's gonna be those things just kind of come and go, and I feel like this is gonna be much more deep. Like it's gonna be much more transformative, like within our culture. I don't know, because I think you're right. I think everyone is tired of all the BS, and it just seems like with everything that's going on right now, like there's so many things that, like you said, like that are just being shaken up, and then that combined with this, with what we're saying of everyone in need, like having this, desire for something real. It's like if it's gonna happen, it's like it does seem like we're primed for it. Like people now are primed for it, and I almost wonder if we're already starting to see it, because, like, just kind of like the beginning stages of it. Because I think I just read not long ago that 2024, like I think it was like the most Bibles that have ever been sold, and like given, I can't remember what it was, like some crazy statistic though, where like more Bibles are being bought, like and gosh, there were other things, but it was like, just these random statistics showing that like that people are hungry for something deeper, something more than just this, like, I don't know.
If I had to be like really, if I had to like say what I really think, like we specifically, like what our part might be in this is, like I look around on social media and I see like guys like Wes Huff being elevated by God to bring this awareness, right, to Christianity. And then I see a lot of churches doing a great job of like bringing people in and getting them saved, right? Like growth tracks, early stuff, right? Like teaching them just, basic principles of what it means to be a Christian. And maybe it's the best, maybe not, I don't know. But that's like the traditional model. And what I think is that when that starts to become like a full-formed movement of, meaning like people seeking God and like really being radically saved, I think that right after that, there's going to be a massive need for discipleship. And it seems to me that the journey that we've been on the past 2 years or so has been really rediscovering what that means. And then we're sort of like been brainstorming, think tanking the ideas of how can we apply this in a practical way to our time right now for people. Like what kind of things could we do to really express these things that Dallas Willard talks about on the Sermon on the Mount, and things that we've experienced in our own personal lives. And I feel like this whole thing that we're doing with intentional spaces and cafes and whatever that becomes, I have a feeling God's going to use that as a way to give these people that are coming into like a radical understanding of Jesus, or like a radical encounter with Jesus, and deciding to devote their lives to him, they're going to like need somewhere to go to work out who they've been before, to like be, obviously like we're not going to be doing the transforming, but the Holy Spirit does that. But like the Holy Spirit working through us to help teach. And like you and I are not your charismatic, on stage type people. We're not the people that are like gonna go up there and just razzle dazzle everyone with an amazing message, but we're really, really good and gifted at sitting down and being real with people and working through the depths of really deep ideas and stuff that's really hard to understand and sit with. And I think that's like what it's going to take. That's like, I think, a lot of work that it's just really difficult to do in church nowadays. I think you have to like literally go meet outside of church to try to have those developments. Like with other people. And I think that somehow, some way, God's positioning us to be used in that way. If I like had to say what I thought right now.
I mean, yeah.
Who knows though? Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, I would agree. And to me, it just makes sense because I've always told you and everyone close to me, like I'd always known that I was called like some form of ministry, right, or whatever, which everyone's called a ministry, but but I always like felt that it wasn't necessarily like from the pulpit, and I wrestled with that for a long time. But now it's like it's all making more sense, like the trajectory.
Yes,
and like
I feel like things are lining up just a little bit more.
Like how God is developing us, like through all this, it all is just. I'm like seeing the puzzle pieces come together,
Me too, dude.
So
Me too.
Yeah. So I'm excited, dude. Like there's so much unknown in this next like decade.
Yeah.
But I feel super excited for it.
I do agree with you that I think that the rumblings have started, and I think like this year we're gonna like start to actually see the like actual beginning fruits of what's like whatever's coming.
Yeah.
And
I think so too.
I think that's only gonna like continue to grow, but I think this year we're gonna like really start to see something happen physically.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
I'm just trying to buckle up and hang on, dude.
For real, dude.
Honestly.
For real.
Well, that was a good question. I feel like that was a good way to wrap it up. So, if you tuned in today, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, we will have that guest next week, and a little bit more on the chill side, on the vibe side, on the laid back side. But thanks for sticking with us. We really feel like this is going somewhere, and. If not, it's just going to be a documentary. But until next time, peace.
Peace out.
I want to talk to you. Not now. Later. No, now.